Welcome back to the Amanda Gervasi Show, the podcast where we strip away the noise, drive into real journeys, and inspire you to show up in your life with courage, clarity, and purpose. Today's guest embodies resilience, reinvention, and radical self-leadership. She's a former high school teacher who stepped out of her comfort zone and leveled up into coaching, wellness, authorship, and leadership. She's a co-author in the Sovereign series, a wife and a mother who's figured out how to nurture others while fiercely protecting her own dreams. Let's welcome Sarah Sturino. Hi, Sarah. Welcome. I'm so glad that we're doing this together. I know it's been a little bit in the making, so it's nice that we can co-host this podcast together. I think it's something new for both of us, so I think it'll be a lot of fun and
Yeah, it's
I think
great
really
to
informative
connect.
for our listeners.
Yeah, it's great to connect this way. I know that we've connected online. Amanda and I sort of connected over Instagram when I think we recognized that we were both posting very similar things, that we were women in roughly the same age group, experiencing a lot of the same feelings about the state of the world, the state of Canada. We're both Canadians living in Ontario. So we're both former teachers.
Yeah, and definitely that I think that drew us together at a lot of those connections. Particularly, I think how our paths were, although different but similar, because we came from teaching and I think having similar mindsets. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Start with that, and maybe your experience as a teacher and how far you went into teaching and why you decided to leave. Because I know you did it longer than me. So
I did it for a very long time. I was a teacher for 26 years here in Ontario. And I think I mostly stayed so long because of the security, being a single mom, being on my own with my son, having a mortgage to pay. I would often over those years think about leaving and think I really can't give up this security. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people there. And then I took early retirement. So I really almost did my full career. Um, I think I recognized things that were wrong in the system almost immediately. And I also think that the system declined in the 26 years I was in it. I used to feel better about what I did and the difference I could make and the ways I could support kids. Towards the end of my career, I just felt like I'm spinning wheels here. There's nothing I can do. Supports have been cut. Alternative programming has been cut. Creative things I used to be able to do are not allowed anymore. Um, I don't know what to do here. And it was just became really frustrating.
mhm. And I think a lot of teachers are in that same boat. I know I was absolutely, and I still am. I'm still in it. I still supply teach, but it's it does get frustrating when it feels like the things that you want to do, you can't do. And there's so many restrictions and so many constraints as a teacher. And it's unfortunately, I think that love of teaching and impacting kids in a positive way has become so difficult now, unfortunately. And similar to you, you know, went into it, because it's more of a second career for me. And I went into because of my divorce and being, a single mother and thinking this is a good career for me. And I love teaching and it gives me the balance that I need for my family so that I can be there for them. And that's what, two of the reasons what really drew me there and kept me there for a little bit before realizing, I think, what I wanted to do and what I was able to do just weren't aligning.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just wasn't there. And I wanted to make an impact and I think in a different way. And I realized I don't think I could do that as a teacher, or at least in a classroom setting,
Right. And
and
how long were you in the classroom for as a full-time teacher?
go for 7 years.
7 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And at the elementary or the secondary level?
So I did both. I started off in high school, which I loved high school. And maybe I would have stayed a little bit longer if I stayed in high school. But I took a job in the elementary panel because they were looking for music teachers and there was a need. And I'm a music teacher. along with several other things. And so I was like, well, let's do this for a bit and then maybe I'll go back into the
Yeah.
secondary panel. And it was just very different. And I think in the secondary panel, I think you get a little bit more, I think, leeway as to what you can teach and versus the elementary school. And I just think kids in general have changed a lot. So there
Oh, wow.
was a huge, huge lack of respect, and it ended up just being babysitting, and I'm like, "I didn't get into this profession to babysit," and
Yeah.
that's what my job turned into, and it wasn't fulfilling me in any way, and like I said, maybe if I would've stayed in the secondary panel, I probably would've stayed longer because you have kids taking your courses because they wanna be there,
What? Yeah.
usually, versus I have to be there, which made the job very difficult. It just wasn't rewarding because, like I said, it was just babysitting a lot of the time, and you didn't have the parents a lot of the time on your side to say, you know, "We get what you're
Mhm.
going through, and we're gonna support you." So, that made it very, very difficult and made it easier, I think, to walk away,
Believe.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I lasted so long because I did move from the elementary to the secondary panel. So I taught for the first bit of my career in elementary
Mhm,
and moved into secondary. I also think I lasted so long because I chose to work primarily in alternative programming and alternative schools
mhm.
where and I never would have thought I would have done that when I first started my career. So I spent most of my career working with what we would call at-risk youth. Don't love that term, but it is what it is. And in there, I was able to be more creative. I was able to do more of what suited my personality or what I wanted to do, a little bit more outside the box. But even that box shrunk and shrunk and shrunk in the years I was in it. So I used to run some really dynamic alternative programs with outdoor education, with taking kids to the gym once a week, getting them out of the school building, tons of fitness involved in the program, tons of community service involved in the program. And it just got to the point where oh, you can't do this anymore. Oh, there's too much liability bringing them to the gym. Oh, we can't afford to do this anymore. And then I'm sitting there with a bunch of at risk youth back in the classroom in chairs 5 days a week which defeats the whole purpose of even having alternative programs. So, yeah, that's sort of my story.
We're seeing that a lot, like, not just, I think, in the program, in the alternative program, but just, both in the, elementary and the secondary level where there's a lot more restrictions as to what you can and cannot do, and I think that makes it difficult. That
There was also a lot of restrictions all of a sudden, I will say, about what I could and could not say. So
Yeah.
I would be called into the principal's office quite often to say, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that. You can't say this. You can't say that." I'd be like, "I've been teaching for 20 plus years, not saying anything different. Why all of a sudden am I not allowed to talk about certain aspects of the Bible in a Catholic school? Why all of a sudden is there no room for alternative opinions even from my students or from
Mhm.
eliciting alternative opinions and having group discussion and debate?" And it just became very um constricting.
It is. I mean, as much as they encourage this type of critical thinking and this debate, I feel like you all end up have to think the same way, and if you don't, then it's not accepted, and I think that's the tough part, there should be more open discourse, even if in a Catholic school, because I taught in the Catholic board too. I think it's finding that correct balance, and we've gone to such an extreme, I think we're trying to be so inclusive that rather than being open, we've actually just become more, like, narrow-minded as to what inclusivity means, I
Yeah, I
think.
think so too. I could actually give you an example that I like to use, which is over my years of teaching, I worked with many youth who were transitioning gender because I was
Mhm.
in alternative programs. That's often where
Right.
they would end up. And as the years wore on, there were more and more of those youth, which is a whole other topic as to why there's so many now. But just to give an example, we had an instance where a student was using a different pronoun. Think they were using the pronoun they. And of course, when somebody asks you to use that pronoun, it doesn't roll off your tongue. It's not singular, it's not natural for a natural English speaker. People are going to make mistakes. So often, mistakes would be made. A student or a teacher would address this particular student with the wrong pronoun, and all hell would break loose. It would turn into this, punishment type situation, and the child is freaking out, and the teacher's getting punished. And I'm going, would it not make more sense to teach this child who wants to use a different pronoun some resilience skills, some
Yes.
coping skills, some problem solving skills, some regulation skills? Because people are going to make mistakes and they are going to use the wrong pronoun. If you are making this choice to
Mhm.
make this identity change and whatever, I think you need the skills that go along with that.
Yes.
So that's just
Yes,
an
I agree.
example for me.
No, but it's a perfect example, and it ties so well into not just in schools, but I think in society today in general, that we get offended, or that people tend to get offended so easily, rather than sometimes, yeah, you just need to let it slide because people just make mistakes. A lot of the time, it's not somebody that's trying to be offensive to you.
Yeah.
And yet people are taking it as if it's a personal attack. And not to say that it can't be, but I think a lot of the time it's not to that degree. And we're twisting and manipulating things and then getting offended by them and villainizing a person that, you know, didn't
Yeah.
mean it in that way. And it's because part of it is we're not, I think we're being selective in what we're hearing a lot of the time. And I agree. I think we haven't trained a lot of our youth to be resilient, to really be critical thinkers and actually listen and understand. I think a lot of the time we look at it as it's become a very, I think, selfish and me society. Um,
Definitely.
Unfortunately,
Yep.
and so I think there's that expectation. Everybody needs to be compassionate to me, but it goes both ways.
Right.
And I don't think that we're fully comprehending, or a lot of individuals are not comprehending that. And it's because, like you said, we're not educating and training and building those foundational skills, those skills on, emotional development and, resilience. You're not going to always get your way. You're not always going to win, and how do you deal with that? It's not about giving a million participation awards. It's not about, constantly soothing everybody that feels offended. It's about figuring out, okay, but how do we move past this? What are constructive steps and ways in which that we can grow and learn and deal with these types of situations in a better way? And I don't think we're necessarily looking at these situations in that way or treating the situations in that way.
Yeah, no, we're not. I think actually, many people have asked me because I would be quite vocal about, my feelings about the Ontario school system. What would you do if you had to fix it? And to me, it needs to be broken down and ripped apart from the inside out. Like, I'm not even sure that there's a quick fix at this point. I think there is. Um, the wrong people are in charge. A lot of money is being spent on the wrong things. We are way too top heavy when you have teachers that can't afford to buy Kleenex or pencils for their classroom, but then you have executives making six figures. That makes no sense to me in something called education. So I wouldn't even know where to start. I think the hope lies in the individual classroom teachers who are still going in there every day, aren't yet burnt out, are still able to offer their best to kids, their love to kids too, because I think there's some love lacking in the system when
Yes.
often that's all these kids need. And I don't mean in a touchy-feely kind of way. I don't mean in a, but if we're not approaching the kids with love and respect, then we're going nowhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it does need a big overhaul, and I don't think there's a quick fix to it, like you said. And um, what are your thoughts on? We have um, Minister of Education Paul Calandra now coming into a lot of the boards in Ontario, um, and taking over. So are they putting supervisors in place and I guess trying to
I think it's smoke and
um,
mirrors, to be honest. I think it's replacing one devil with another. I think it's, giving the public the illusion of control or if we're fixing things. I mean,
mhm.
I think some of these boards have spent money wrong and have done things where the government probably did need to step in, but I'm not confident that the government stepping in or the Minister of Education stepping in is a solution at all. Like I said, I think you're just replacing probably one set of problems. with another. I don't know. And to be honest, I haven't been following a whole lot of what's going on in Ontario education since
Mhm.
I took my early retirement,
Yeah.
and since I also owned an education center, a brick and mortar education center for 3 years, and since I sold that, happened in the same year, as I took early retirement, I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to what is happening in Ontario education. What I have been paying attention to is I do have some former teacher friends, colleagues who've left the system and started some really dynamic projects, homeschools that are thriving, forced schools, and other alternative schools that are absolutely thriving. And I love to see that. And I love to see parents making those different choices for their kids. And I think one thing I would change government wise is I think that if parents choose to homeschool their children, they should be able to get their tax portion of their education tax money. If they're choosing to do private school or if they're choosing to homeschool, they should not have to pay into the education taxes. And I think if that happened, the numbers would become clearer of the vast number of families that since the pandemic are making alternative choices because there's a lot.
Yeah, and I definitely think that there is a shift. I think, throughout the pandemic and after the pandemic, I think there's definitely been a shift with alternative education becoming more popular, and I think just a lot of the way things have been done in education, I think have been brought to the forefront. I think we've become much more aware of what's happening in the school boards.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, uh, you left teaching after 26
Mhm.
years, and what did you do after that? Because 'Cause you're still young, so what
Yeah.
and I know you have
Well,
lots on your plate, but not everybody knows. So what are you doing? Tell us, you left
well,
education, what are we doing now?
I left after 26 years. For the
Oh,
last
26.
10 years of my career, I actually did have a wellness business on the side. So I think it was partially to keep me sane, but it was also just me exploring my other passions. It started with me becoming a Pilates instructor, and I was teaching Pilates at various gyms and studios. And then it sort of evolved into just developing relationships with women in those settings. And I started running women's wellness retreats. So pre pandemic, I was probably running 5 or 6 wellness retreats a year alongside other wellness professionals. I became certified in mindfulness. And I had this nice little business going with Pilates teaching and women's retreats. Um, a lot of that died during the pandemic. And then that's when I decided to buy an education center because I also wanted to offer alternatives for people during the pandemic. I was open even when schools were closed. So I helped a lot of parents who had their kids at home learning during those years. And then when I retired from teaching, I thought I was going to go back into the wellness space. I started to revive some of that. I took a course in quantum biology. I thought I was going to do some wellness coaching, but really I think I've been called in a bit of a different direction. Um, I finding the wellness space really, really noisy right now and really full of a lot of fluff and a lot of contradictory information. And I think it's really hard for the average consumer, the average woman out there to discern what's real and what's not. And I'm not loving getting lost in that noise. So I sort of pivoted to, well, I didn't really pivot. I had the opportunity during all of this to write in a collaborative book. So last spring of 2025, I published in a collaborative book. So it was 16 Canadian women who published their stories in a book called The Sovereign. And actually, the story I wrote in there was primarily about my experiences in teaching and how toxic they were and surviving those years. And then working with that same publishing house, the opportunity came around to write another book. And this time I was going to be the lead author. So I would lead this book, I would gather the other women to write in it, lead them through the writing and publishing process. And now we have a book coming out in end of March 2026 called Reclaiming Mental Health. So the focus of this book was all on mental health, women sharing their stories. And that's been a personal journey for me as well. It's been something I've been very passionate about when I worked in the school system. And yeah, that's been my focus sort of for the last year is writing, coaching women in writing. Writing can be very therapeutic, and then working on launching this book.
Beautiful. That's exciting. That's
It
really
is
exciting.
exciting.
being part of it and now leading in another one. So that's because this is your second, correct?
Yeah. So the first,
Yeah.
I wrote a chapter, and the second, I was the lead author to bring together the chapters and bring together the whole process. And then out of that, I've also been doing some individual writing coaching with women, for women who want to write their story, not sure if they ever want to publish it or not. But, going through that process can help you to figure that out, because writing can be triggering. A lot of stuff will come up. It can also be really healing, and very healing also when you actually put it out there and other people validate your experience by saying, "Oh my God, wow, I experienced something similar to that. Thank you for writing about this." That.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Whether they choose to publish or not, I think, like you said, it can be very therapeutic, can be healing, and it's just I think it can just definitely help you understand and grow as an individual. So whether you're writing to publish or journal or just for your own personal purposes, I think it's a great I think daily habit to incorporate into your life to some degree.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And what have you been doing since you left teaching?
So like I said, I left my permanent. I did officially resign, but I stayed on just to supply teach, have my little safety net.
Yes.
Um, but I left primarily because I had started my own business, so a cheesecake business. I think there's always been this entrepreneurial spirit in me, and um, I think just with the school system changing so much, I was not being fulfilled. It really pushed me to take this side business more seriously, and I put all my effort into what a cheesecake, which I did, and I'm still doing, which I've been doing now for the past 3 plus years. Or that, yeah, three, for almost 4 years now. Um, and I always kind of dabbled in doing some entrepreneurial things here and there. But I think just with a lot of societal pressures of you need to have a family and get married and have a good steady career, I never really put all my effort into them. And it was always, it's a side thing. Just a side business. And
Yeah.
I didn't take it seriously enough. And so I don't think others took all these like side businesses that I was trying to start seriously enough because of this mentality of, I need to follow that straight path that everybody wants you to follow. And like I said, after several years of teaching, I wasn't being fulfilled, and I realized I need to follow what I'm actually passionate about, and I wanted to do something that was my own. And cooking and baking has always been a huge passion of mine. And I thought this is something that I need to put my effort in. And, we'll see where it goes. We have to take that leap of faith sometimes. And that's what I did. I took that leap of faith. And, I'm really lucky to have a really supportive husband that said, you need to do something. You're not happy doing what you're doing. And I support you if you want to leave. And so I felt very blessed to have somebody behind me to do that because I know it can be difficult to take that leap of faith when you don't have that support behind you. And especially if, you're a single mother and you have other responsibilities. So I felt very lucky to be able to do that.
I think
Um,
that's a really good point, because that's also why I was able to retire early, is because my
mhm,
second husband has been, so supportive, and the same idea as what you said, saying,
yeah. Because
"Isn't working for you, let's not do it anymore."
right, and I felt very lucky to do that, and not to say that you can't do that without having somebody else's support to support you, and it's not even just financially, it's even just emotionally, somebody to be there to be like, "You can do this, keep going," because it goes beyond that, right? And I had somebody there, I have somebody there to say, "You can do this, keep going, doesn't matter how hard it gets," because it can be hard. There's days where it's like, "I don't wanna do this anymore," or there's months where it's like, "It's really slow right now, and, should I continue going?" And so it's nice to have that person to continue to push you to say, you can do this. Right. And, sometimes we see, whether we see social media or the people talk, and it's like, yeah, just do your own thing. And it's great just to say that, do your own thing. But if you have other responsibilities, it's not that easy. And I get that. You know, I get it. I get it. And I always say, I wish I had done this when I was younger, when I didn't have these responsibilities, but I'm glad at this point in my life that I can do them. Um, so I had
What is
that
the name
going.
of your cheesecake business?
Amore cheesecake.
Okay, and is it available in retail? Okay, what is it exactly?
So I have direct to customer side, and then I also have a wholesale side.
Okay.
So you can purchase them in several different retailers throughout the GTA and Simcoe areas. But then I also provide directly to customers. You can order directly through me. And then I don't have a physical storefront. So everything has to be ordered ahead of time, although I do have lots on hand. So you can order and then come pick up or get it delivered. But um, I don't physically have a storefront. For my primarily the business is mostly wholesale, which I like. I like having that wholesale side going, and I did push that more. But with that, I realized I still miss teaching as much as I love that side of thing. I miss teaching, I miss educating, and it's always been in me to wanna make a difference. I started now my executive coaching business, which is still early on, but I'm liking where that's going, and it's filling that gap of being able to make a difference on my own terms and being able to really, I think, help motivate and educate those individuals that maybe don't have the confidence to do what they need to do. And it doesn't necessarily mean to be an entrepreneur and leave your job, but to be able to be successful in whatever you want to do, whether it be in your current career, and taking those right steps so that you do understand your self worth and that you do feel valued and that other around you see that you are valued. And um, I think it's not just with women, but I think it tends to be a lot with women where we tend to, at least I know I do, take on so many different things because I feel like that's going to make me more valuable. The people
Right.
are going to appreciate me more if I do more. Right? I'll do this, I'll do
Oh,
that, and I
yes, I've got
volunteer
a big history of that.
right. And I preach it, and it's still something I have to work on because I tend to be that people pleaser, bro. It's like I'll take on a million things. My husband's like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do everything, right? And it's really about being able to hone in those skills, so that people do appreciate what you do, and you're not just the uh, the go-to person for all the other stuff. Because I think people don't actually end up appreciating you for who you are because you just do anything. So
Right.
I right? So you see other people kind of moving ahead of you, and you're like, "What? I've done so much more. How did they move ahead before I did?" And it's really about that shift in mindset.
You're a multi-passionate woman. I know that from following you that, you have the
Yes,
cheesecake business. Now you're doing the executive coaching. You're very talented musically. You have uh, somewhat of, I don't know if I want to call it a singing career, but I believe you sing for
yes.
others. Like it's not just a
I
hobby.
do. I do perform. I do. You can
Yes.
hire me. And
Okay.
I love it. Yeah.
And
Uh,
then also, I've seen lately that you've been involved in the conservative women's group in,
mhm.
I don't know, is that Ontario or Canadian politics? I believe it's Canadian politics. Tell me
It's
more about
Canadian.
that.
So I've been actively involved in politics for a while, uh, probably 10 plus years.
Okay.
In the background. So, but I've been actively involved in several campaigns, on EDAs. There's always been an importance, I think, in understanding what's going on in Ontario, within Canada, in the world. And like I said, I've always been actively involved in it. Um, and then over the last little bit, I think there's been such a shift in our world, in our, in Ontario and Canada. And it's really just propelled me forward even more that I want to get involved even more. I think newer ideas.
Yeah.
I think we need different ideas, different mindsets. And so I am getting more involved in it, and I have become part of it's brand new, to be honest. It's called the Canadian Women's um, Conservative Association. So it's
Started by Anna Polyev
It's
or no?
not started by Anna Polygon, although she is a part of it. So it's started by Alicia Vianga. So
Okay.
yes. So she's been actively involved in politics, and she had run in the last federal election in Pickering, um, with the Conservative Party. And so she had started it. Basically bringing a lot of women together, whether you are in the Conservative Party or not, but it's having those similar values and ideas. And really, it's about educating women about those ideas and making them more aware. I think a lot of the time we have certain ideas of what a party represents without really understanding it fully. And it's just about bringing women together to understand and to have open discourse about it. It's really not a selling thing where it's like, okay, now you need to vote conservative. It's really not about that. It is just really having an open discussion with all women from whatever, party you're a part of and whatever walk of
Right.
life you're a part of, whatever background you're part of, and just really being able to have those open discussions and have an understanding as to, what's important to you and where are you feeling that there needs to be some change and
Yeah.
maybe what are some things that you don't understand and then maybe we can clarify that and have a discussion about it. So it's a really nice group to be a part of. We, like I said, it's brand new. I've known Alicia for many many years, and she's a wonderful woman and a wonderful advocate. And we have a Canada wide, so this is Canada wide, event coming up that there's going to be many small events that are happening May 3rd all throughout Canada. So there's more information to come, but we're inviting all women to be a part of these events that are happening on May 3rd. This Canada wide event that's happening that's going to happen all at the same time. So it's going to be pretty monumental. It's going to be an amazing event just to bring everybody together that's interested or curious or is just looking for other like-minded women. Uh,
Interested to learn more about that. I will be back in I'm in Nicaragua right now, but I will be back in Canada by May 3rd, and I would be very interested to, so send some information my way. I don't know. I live in the Kitchener-Waterloo area when I'm in, Canada, so I don't know if anything's going on in that
I
area,
will
but
let you know there are
I'd love to know.
lots of events happening, but I'll let you know if there's one happening specifically in that area.
I also think that, I think this is important because I don't think Canadians have been politically active enough. Like, until fairly recent history, I don't think we've had to be. We've had a fairly, how to put it, but a calm existence without a lot of turmoil. And I think that things are rapidly changing, and Canadians are not used to paying attention, or they're used to only paying attention to what they're told on the news. And it's time for all Canadians to sort of pay more attention, look for alternative sources of news, find out for yourself what is going on because lots is going on. And
Yeah,
it's
lots.
time to be involved. It's time to get active. It's time to at least keep yourself better. Yeah, I'm always amazed when I travel, at how better informed a lot of other cultures are about politics than we are as Canadians.
Think we've been so privileged to live in
Yes,
Canada and not have to deal with a lot of these, I think, external things that a lot of other countries deal with. We've been shielded from a lot of it, and so we're very blessed. But it's coming to our front door now, and we need to
it's
wake up.
there.
It's there, and we need to wake
There.
up, and we need to be aware of what's happening, and we haven't had to do that, and this is why I'm becoming more involved again in politics because I feel like we need to get involved, and we need to wake up, and we need to see what's going on, and we need to start creating some change. And the only way we can do that is by physically getting involved, is by
Right.
understanding what's going on. Because you can sit in your in your home and watch your Instagram feeds, and that's great, and be upset, and that's fantastic. But if you're not going to do anything about it, then
Agreed,
nothing's going to happen,
100%. I
right?
think
And so
that right
you
now there's probably 3 or 4, I would say, types of people in Canada. I think there's the people that are doing what you're doing, that are upset and therefore doing something about it and getting involved in some way, shape, or form, and that can look different depending on people's capacity and time and all of that. I think there's a lot of people who are just completely unaware still and are just still in a bubble. I think there's a lot of people who are aware, angry, upset, but feel they don't know what to do or they don't have the ability to do anything about it. And then I think the fourth group is sort of what my husband and I are thinking. And I know some people criticize this, which is we're thinking of just getting out of Canada, which is part of the reason that we're in Nicaragua, exploring, seeing what it would be like to live here or somewhere like this. Because I think some people are just at that point where it's like we were both very, very vocal during the pandemic years, very politically involved. And we almost got to the point where I hate to say given up because that's terrible, but you know, where exiting might be our best choice. I think people are in different life phases too. Our kids are older. We don't have little kids anymore, but the overwhelming number of people I know who have left or are leaving Canada, it really scares me too.
Yeah, I think so. It seems to be a norm conversation. Whether people are
Yes.
able to physically leave or not is a different story, but the conversation is there. And that is scary because I don't think that was something even 10 years ago that was people were
No,
talking about. It
no,
wasn't
it
the
wasn't.
norm that you want to leave. If anything, it was like, we're blessed to be in Canada. Who really wants to leave? Like, maybe be a snowbird, but that's the extent of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And now it's becoming a more permanent type of exit. So
Well,
a
we're
lot of people are
here
talking about that.
in Nicaragua, and there is an overwhelming number of Canadians who are permanently living here, raising their kids here, forming community here. Imagine if you had told Canadians 10, 15 years ago that they would be leaving Canada to raise their family in Nicaragua,
Right.
you know? And I think it's a lot of things. It's freedom, it's cost of living, it's lots of different things. So, yeah, very interesting times that we're living in.
Definitely, definitely very interesting times. But yeah, I think it's interesting that it's become such an open discussion. And it's something, I'll be honest, my husband and I have spoken about. We're in a different phase in our lives because our kids are still young, but it's interesting because it's something that I would not have even thought about thinking of,
Right.
several
Yeah.
years ago. And now it's like, how can we potentially maybe down the road make this work?
Right.
Um,
And then the
and
whole Alberta separation conversation as well. I know
yeah,
where my husband is at is he's like, he would like to be 6 months in Alberta just in case they separate, and 6 months, in somewhere in Central America.
yeah,
Um, because he said, in his words, and I agree with him, it's like, if I look at the values that I grew up with and the values that I always thought of as Canadian, they're better represented in Alberta than anywhere else in the nation,
they are.
unfortunately. So,
Danielle
yeah.
Smith is fantastic. And she's really been taking care of her province. So and you're seeing people. I know a family that left just recently, a few months ago, and went to go live in Alberta.
Yes.
And if you're able to do that, fantastic. Um, it's an interesting time we're living in right now, and I think you're right. There's you have several options, and you could continue to be angry at home, or you could do something about it. And
Right.
I think it's you need to decide. You
Yeah.
need to decide instead of just being angry and pointing fingers. Pointing fingers isn't going to do anything.
No, it's
So,
not. So you either
yeah,
need to get politically involved
right.
and be somewhat vocal, or and be in the background. You don't need to be the
Yeah,
voice.
it's not about going out and protesting. I
Oh,
don't do that. It's just, but it is about the more people that get involved, the the more of a voice everyone has as a whole, right? So you don't necessarily need to have the biggest voice on your own. Nobody's asking
no.
that, but the a little bit from everybody really does go a
It's a
long way.
huge difference. Yeah, it
It'll
can.
make a huge difference. Even just going out and voting makes a huge difference. And, you know, those people that it's like, my vote's not going to make a difference. Well, you have enough people that say that it makes a huge difference. So, I do believe in the power. You have a voice. Not everybody has that opportunity to vote. They don't
Right.
live in a democratic country to do that. So that is your right. Use it. I mean, it's scary right now what's going on in Iran. Not that I want to bring it up right now, but it's so scary. And I have lots of you know, friends or just, friends of friends that have family that's there. And it is sad and it's scary and they don't have those rights. So we have them here. Use them.
Yes, I agree 100%. It must be very interesting being a conservative woman in teaching, though, because I always found that very interesting. I
It's,
would be the odd man woman out in the staff room
yes.
if politics ever came up. and actually, like, to the point where, it was almost, like, abusive and ostracizing in the staffs that I worked in, like, people verbally attacking you because you have conservative political beliefs. Unbelievable, really, but it's
It
true.
it's true. It's scary. I have a story about this, because similar to you, most of the time it's like they talk about it, and I just fade into the background. I don't even get involved. And if I did, it'd be like that. You'd be attacked, which is ridiculous because I'm not attacking anybody. Wouldn't it be nice just to have open discourse with people?
Especially with
Um,
educators.
right, right, exactly. Because in the end, I think at the core, we want the same thing. We want what's best for our students, but yet it's taken such a political, well, you're conservative and you're liberal. Why? I've never understood that, because really at the core, we really do want the same thing. So it makes no sense to me. But when I got into teaching, I'm, I'm a lifelong learner always, and I want to understand everything. I think it's so important to really have a strong foundation. And I've always been conservative or had conservative values. And I decided I do want to get someone involved in the union. Now, unions are always, considered liberal. But for me, it was, I want to make a difference. And so it didn't have to be, I looked at it as like, it doesn't have to be political. I'm going in because I want to try to make a difference. And maybe if I got in and on that side of things within the union, I could make a difference. I can give a different perspective, a different voice. And maybe I went in naive, but I thought I went in with this idea of I can do real good, right? And we can all work together.
I did the
and
exact same thing.
okay, so you get it, right?
I
So
did
I
the
went in.
exact same thing.
So you get it. So
Yeah,
I
I
went
get
in,
it.
and it was interesting because I really did have to hide my conservative values. And as long as we were speaking, it was interesting because I think I had a lot of respect getting in, and I went into a bunch of different committees and got involved and was leads on certain things. And it was interesting because I didn't really talk. You could tell it was very negative towards conservatives. And so I kind of just kept my politics to myself and just dealt with things that involved students and our school and working conditions and all that jazz, right? And everything was fine. It's interesting because we were all on the same page. They loved my ideas. Everything was fantastic. And I went to the AGM. So I decided to go to one of the AGMs as a delegate. And I was at the time the lead of the new teachers committee. And I decided to speak on behalf of the new teachers because there was a bunch of cuts happening with the union as to different services they were providing to the new teachers to train them. As a teacher yourself, you come in as a new
Yeah.
teacher and yeah, you go to teachers college, but you don't really learn how to be a teacher. You don't know how to navigate all the systems. You don't really get trained in all of that, right? So um, I was pushing that teachers would have that type of education provided to them so that they can feel more prepared writing report cards and classroom management type things that you don't really get in teachers college. And so I spoke upon this, and I got lots of love. Uh, it did not pass, unfortunately, because you vote. If you've ever been to an AGM, any
Yeah.
sort of thing that you bring forward, everybody votes on. It did not
Mhm.
pass. But the funny thing is, I won an award. So at the end, they give you awards they give awards to people that are at the AGM. So I won an award for best speaker. Even though my thing didn't pass. So out
Right.
of the hundreds, thousands of people that were there, I won an award, which was great. So I got a picture and an award and everything like that. Well, then I got hate because I do have a social following, and I do post things about being a conservative. Well, all of a sudden I went from this like great person who has all these great ideas to like this hated person because I was a conservative supporter.
Mhm.
And how dare
Yeah.
like people were just being
Oh,
really
yeah.
mean.
I know. I've experienced the same.
And I could not believe the switch,
Yeah.
the hate that I was getting, the hate. And I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, no, I'm going to stay. And my union president, who always knew my background, was very open. It was like, Amanda, you're great. And, it doesn't have to be so political. Like, I'm good with what you want to do. And so I stayed and decided I'm going to run. You know what? I'm going to run and be on um, I'm going to be on the board and I'm going to run for one of the counselor positions. And that was just, I think I opened up a can of worms there, and people got to know who I was even more because people started searching me up. And it's not that I was saying anything negative. Uh, and that's enough. And it was just like, it was again, just hate upon hate upon
Yeah.
hate. And I walked away. I was like, you know what? I can't really make a difference in here. And that's the sad thing when it has to be,
Well, there's groupthink. There's massive groupthink, and I'm not sure that that's going anywhere. And it's really unfortunate that it's educators engaging in groupthink, because to me, educators should be encouraging all these diverse dialogues and everything. It should be the exact opposite. It should be the place where differences of opinion are most valued. And instead, it's the place where differences of opinion are bullied, shut down, criticized, all of those things. So I've experienced very much the same things.
yeah, it's sad. Like it's really unfortunate. Um, but it is what it is.
Yes. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Your work with politics, your cheesecake business, your executive coaching, both of us, coming out of teaching. I've got my book coming out, Reclaiming Mental Health. Anything else that we think we want to cover here?
I don't know. We covered a lot.
We did. We did.
I want to just quickly plug that we have a municipal election coming up, and since we're talking about politics, so we talked about voting. Do go out and vote. I know it's still early, but get involved. If you don't, municipal politics is really important. It affects you directly. I've been getting very much involved in my municipal politics and specifically in my area. And I think it's important. Get involved. It's not just we focus so much on provincial and federal, but what's happening municipally is just as important. It's right in your backyard. It affects you directly. Um, you'd be
Sure.
surprised. I think we forget about it, the
Yeah,
importance
we
of it. So
do.
you know,
And it doesn't
get
get as much
involved.
attention. So yeah,
It
no, I would.
doesn't get as much attention, but it really is important. So get involved because you'd be surprised how much say your counselors and your mayor really do have at the provincial and federal level, and that they can even at the very least bring your concerns forward, right? So, and they don't know those concerns if you don't get involved and you don't speak up. So, get involved in that if you're not already. The election's coming up in October. Hmm? Yes. But, this was so lovely, Sarah. I loved this conversation, and it was nice to get to know you better and your path and where you are right now, and this book that's coming out is very exciting. I love that.
And I will tell you that being here in Central America, I'm actually, and I never thought I would say this, I'm actually contemplating teaching again, because I have discovered some schools here that are just so incredibly beautiful and alternative, and kids outdoors every day, and kids exploring, and kids in natural environments, and kids exposed to all sorts of different curriculums. Because with
Mhm.
the international schools, they can choose the math curriculum they want, the language curriculum they want. So yeah, it's something that's crossing my mind, that that may be something in the near future. I'm not so sure.
It's exciting. So I guess Nicaragua is becoming more and more of a reality as a permanent residence, maybe?
uh, it could be, I think. Yeah, I think it could
Yeah,
be.
could
It
be.
could be. It's
That's
actually a pretty easy place to live and navigate. I mean, I think that a lot of people react and ask if it's the questions I get asked most often are, "Do you feel safe there?" I don't really feel safe at home anymore, so I don't. To me, I actually feel a little safer here, to be honest. Um, I never would have said that 5, 10 years ago, but again, things have changed at home in Canada. And the other question I get asked is, "Oh, what is their government? Their government is not a democracy." And I like to say, guess what? Ours isn't really. It is, but
right.
Is it? So sometimes it's just, the expression that came to my mind is better lipstick on the pig. I know it's not the most fancy, greatest expression, but so I think it's just being aware, even if you decide to settle somewhere else, of what is going on around you politically and risks and all. I don't
I
know that
think that's a
we would never give up Canadian residency, or Canadian citizenship. I don't think at this point in our lives. I mean, we're well into our 50s, my husband and I. But I think if we were much younger, we
Mhm,
might think so. Also, because you have so much money invested in the country, and they really you can't get it out without giving your share. And your
right?
share. Like, I don't know if you know anything about that, about doing deemed dispositions when you leave Canada, but it's not a pretty situation. So
I can imagine.
yeah.
Just how much we pay in taxes already, so I can only imagine that if you try to take it out, what they're gonna try to take.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, lots
ah,
of layers there, but a great conversation. I hope
yeah.
women listening, maybe learned something, maybe can identify with some of where we've both been at, are at, some of our stories. And I'm sure in the show notes we'll have where you can reach out to either one of us,
Yes.
um, where you can buy my book, maybe where you can get involved in this conservative women's organization. Yeah. Thank you so much for the
Yeah.
conversation, and thanks to the listeners for listening.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you, Sarah. This was fantastic. I enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank everyone for joining us today and for listening in. If you took one thing from today's episode, let it be this: your life isn't defined by where you started, what others expect of you, or what feels safe. It's defined by the choices you make with your power, your time, and your heart. Thank you again to Sarah for living out loud, showing up, and helping all of us lean into our own fearlessness. I want to thank you again for joining me on this episode of The Amanda Gervasi Show. If you found value in today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone to keep the conversation going. Until next time, remember, stay bold, stay curious, and always live life fearlessly. You earned it.